So the Lions came into this week with no starting secondary and managed to put forth their best defensive performance of the year so far and one of the better defensive performances in the Dan Campbell era, much to the surprise of pretty much everyone. Welcome in everyone to the Payne and Drain show following another Lions win 24 to 9 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this podcast and I'm joined as always by my co-host Alex Drain. And Alex, what was your level of surprise over what happened on Monday night?
It was pretty surprising. I kind of went into that game. The thing I was thinking about, I think it was Saturday. I was talking to my brother, and it kind of dawned on me that I was like, this game is probably going to be like the Packers game from last year, the one at Ford Field. And it was the Thursday night game. That was right after Rodriguez had gotten injured, Anzalone had gone down. They were kind of pulling random guys off the street to play at linebacker, and it was against a good team in a primetime game. And that was very much just a grind it out kind of game. Like just everything we have, just win this game and then regroup with a longer break after that. And that was a thrilling game, a high scoring game. It came down to the big fourth down, then the field goal at the buzzer to win it. That's what I was expecting, that kind of feel. And this ended up being a very different feel. So I was quite surprised. It made for a very frustrating viewing experience, I guess you could say. If you go back to the start of the game, like if you had told me 6:30 on Monday, Lions are going to win by 15, I would have been like, wow, we are just laying back in an armchair drinking pina coladas watching that. Like, I can't believe it. But instead, it was a 15-point win that was quite stressful at points because it really did feel like they should have been winning by more than they were. And then eventually they put it away. But it was very much an eventful game. It was an eventful evening. We have to talk about the overlap with the Blue Jays and Mariners game 7. I know you were doing the YouTube stream. Did you have the Blue Jay game on in the background, or were you just following the
So,
score? How did that
so
go
at,
down?
at halftime, I flipped over just to see what was happening. And when I flipped over at halftime, it was 3-1 Seattle, I believe. And then after I wrapped up stream, I flipped over to the Blue Jays, and it was the bottom of the seventh as Springer was stepping up to the plate. So I turned on the game, was like, hey, let me watch the end of the Blue Jays game. And the first thing I see is Springer's home run. So the timing was absolutely impeccable, and the crowd in Toronto was insane. Like the all of Canada seemed like there was a Calgary Flames game going on that night. And at the Flames game, they stopped the game to watch the Blue Jays win that game in the ninth inning. So like it across Canada, like it was like the entire country stopped to watch what was happening in Toronto on Monday night. So it has become it's very similar to when the Raptors went on their championship run a number of years ago, where even if you're not a basketball fan, if you're not a baseball fan, like it doesn't matter. Like the entire country is tuning in to what is happening with the Blue Jays right now. Obviously, not a lot of people are giving them a good shot against the Dodgers. However, crazier things have happened.
I mean, yeah, the 2019 Nationals beat the Astros, the 01 Patriots beat the Rams, the 06 Cardinals beat the Tigers, the 04 Pistons beat the Lakers, and when the Raptors won their championship, they were a pretty significant underdog going into that series against Golden State. So you never know. But
Yep.
that was actually the third time in October that the Blue Jay game has overlapped with a Lion game. The Cincinnati game overlapped with the Yankees game too, and the Kansas City game overlapped with the Mariners game 1. But Lions on a bye week, and the next week the series would be over by then. So there won't be any more of that. But it's
Yeah,
been a
and
chaotic October.
yeah, and everyone in Toronto, like the deja vu with the Batista home run from back a decade ago, and then the Joe Carter from 30 years ago. Like everyone is just feeling the magic of this run right now, and that's always good to see. And we hope that the Lions will be able to give us one of those magical runs, or because I know a lot of Detroit sports fans are waiting for something similar.
Yeah, well, the thing that dawned on me at the end of the Blue Jay game 7 was that the Mariners fans basically had the baseball equivalent of the Lions Niners NFC Championship game. The Mariners have the longest drought without ever making the championship round. They go up 2-0 in that series on the road, coming home for 3 games. Then they go up 3-2 in the series. Then they go up 3-1 into the seventh inning in game seven and lose. I mean, that about as crushing as it can ever get. But the Mariners fans, they kind of have the Lions fans thing where we just expect the worst going into every game. So they were moderately prepared, I guess.
And on the flip side, the Toronto fans are moderately annoyed at Seattle fans because like that's what you get for like cheering at Springer while he's like on the ground with his knee injury. By the way, how George Springer is walking, I don't know. I don't know how you take a pitch like a 95-mile-an-hour pitch off the kneecap and just walk it off. Like that was athletes are just built different, man. I don't get it. To keep this train on the tracks and get back to talking about football, though, so the Lions, they win 24-9, and as you said, surprisingly frustrating on the side of the ball we expected good things from, and that has to do with the play of one Jared Goff, who was uncharacteristically really out of it in this one. He was really good on the first drive, pretty good on the second drive, up until the Diaby strip sack, and that zapped his ability to throw accurate passes, apparently, because Goff was out of sorts for the rest of the game. What, just in simple terms, what on earth was happening with him?
Yeah, it was weird. The accuracy is rarely ever an issue for him. I mean, he's usually one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. And then you look at the total stat line 20 of 29, 241, and that's fine. But he takes 4 sacks in the game. And then there were just some throws that he just misses, and as well as making a bad read on the interception. And that sequence at the end of the first half really kind of summed up the frustration of the first half, in which the Lions get 2 takeaways, both in plus territory, and they get 0 points off of them. The first one has JMO open for like a 15-yard gain on 3rd and 5, and Goff throws it into the ground. And that's just not something we're used to seeing. And then,
Lead protection, too.
yep, Bates misses that field goal. And so then goes back to the Bucks. The Lions get another takeaway. They get another shot at it. Goff takes a really frustrating sack because it was in his line of sight. Like, it wasn't a blindside hit around the left side. It's a corner blitz to the right. He can see it in certainly in his peripheral vision, but just doesn't really pick it up. Loses 9 or 10 yards on that play, and then right after that makes a throw that he just can't make in that situation. Gets intercepted. Never had a shot to be completed. He just missed the underneath corner sitting down there. Throws it right to him. And they go into halftime only up 11 when they could have been up 20, 17, 24. I mean, play it out however you want to. They should have been up 3 scores given those takeaways in that field position. And it just kept feeling like the offense was letting the Buccaneers hang around. And a lot of it did come back to Goff. Some of it was blocking, certainly, but Goff was also a big component of it.
Yeah, and as you said, the frustration on the interception, not only did he not see Jamel Dean hanging out under that, the safety was crashing down over the top. It was not an open throw. I don't know what he thought he saw, but just really out of character throw for him and decision for him. The and the rest of the passing offense was poor as a result. Amon-Ra ended up having a nice game because he racked up a ton of yards on the first 2 drives, including that opening touchdown. Outside of him, there wasn't a lot going on in the passing game aside from one guy who was the reason the Lions offense moved at all. But Sam Laporta, pretty quiet. Brock Wright had a couple of catches, which for him is pretty good. But the big one is also Jameson Williams. 0 for 2 on his targets in this one. I would say neither of those were catchable. And he also has the one back shoulder catch called back due to offensive pass interference, which live looked like an egregious push off. The replay made it look not nearly as bad. And there were similar plays that Mike Evans, when he was in the game, he made. So that's unfortunate for JMO. And we are now reaching a point where fans are getting really fed up with Williams essentially being a cardio merchant and not being involved in the game plan on a week-to-week basis. We've seen one game, I believe, where he's had decent involvements. Like he had 4 catches for like 20 yards in week one, 2 catches in week two, of course, both being long plays, which helps. And then he had the one game with 6 for 66 and a score. But he's been really uninvolved for a long time, and we keep bringing it up and saying there's a lot of mouths to feed. However, usually when that's the case, these guys rotate around, and it seems like JMO's just not getting rotated into the route concepts that he needs to be put in to find success.
Yeah, it's pretty strange what's going on with him, and I don't know how to kind of diagnose it. They've taken so few of those vertical shots, and maybe that's related to coverage, etc. And we know all about clearing out space for the other guys, blah blah blah. But they came into the season saying they were going to be more vertical. And remember that was the talking point in trading camp, and then it has really not come to pass. And they just haven't found enough ways to get him the ball. And it feels like they go into some games saying, okay, let's get him the ball. But then if they don't have that focus, it just doesn't really happen. And again, they've continued to gain pretty good chunks of yardage over these games. They score quite a few points. They remain in the upper echelon of offenses in the league. So it's hard to say that the offense is failing, but the last few weeks, it continues to feel just a little bit like they're just missing something, right? Like it just hasn't totally clicked. And that's a feel around the team in general. But you do kind of wonder if finding a way to get JMO in rhythm is that missing piece. And I would have to think it will be a big point of discussion during the bye week as they look back at the body of work because there's just not enough yards, not enough catches for a guy that has the pedigree and also upcoming will be his salary. I mean, they extended him, they bought into him. You need to find a way to keep him involved.
Yeah, and Penei Sewell came out after the game and said something along the lines of the Lions offense is right there. They just have to stop making so many mistakes and they're capable of being the best offense in the league. And a very fair criticism to that quote was, well, this is like the third or fourth time this season that we've heard something along those lines or come out of a game with that sentiment. And at what point are you just not capable of that? So the offense has to do some soul searching because not every element has clicked every week. Now, one element that had been missing coming into this game that in particular had been very critical of was Jahmyr Gibbs and the lack of explosive runs, and that he hadn't found the gear that he had found down the stretch last year. And oh my Lord, did he ever find it in this one? Over 200 all-purpose yards. Obviously, that's 78-yard lightning strike, which a lot of people, including myself, were reminded of the Javid Best Monday Night Football run, the 88-yarder against the Bears, just out of a cannon, untouched all the way down the field. He also had a number of the Buccaneers were giving him the swing pass out of the backfield all day, and he was able to get a ton of yards off that as well. Should have had a receiving touchdown, but Penei Sewell kind of just walked by or sprinted by Anton Winfield on that play. It didn't matter because Gibbs got in on the next play. Just how impressive was this performance from Jahmyr Gibbs with his career high in yardage?
That was a great screen game for the offense. That was the one thing that Morton did pretty well in this game. They were able to, and not just screens, but the sort of swing pass out to the perimeter as well. They hit the Bucks with that a couple times early. It was a weird game in the rushing component because down to down, they didn't have much success. There was a lot of 1-2 yard stuffs in this game, but then there were enough chunks, including the home run, that kind of justified the whole package. Gibbs had a couple like 10, 12 yard runs, and then he has the big one, which was 70 something, I believe. They said it was the longest Lion run in 14 years, which has to be the Jahmyr Best 86-yard
Yeah,
run Monday Night Football.
it was 78 yards, which Gibbs's career high was 70 that he got last year against the Titans. So it's hard to beat. Like you're not in those situations very much. So
Yeah, and that one, obviously, his acceleration and athleticism is the reason it turns into a touchdown, but that one was really all blocking. He just had to turn on the Jets because that was beautifully blocked. They double the tackles, climb up to the linebackers. The safeties kind of in a bad position to deal with Gibbs once they smoke right through the second level, and then he was gone. So that was a great play, and they really needed that play in that moment. I mean, obviously, everyone needs a 70-plus yard touchdown run at any time, but in that particular juncture of the game, it was 7-0 still after what close to 25 minutes of game time, including drives into Bucks territory, the strip sack one. It was really, I mean, at that point, I think the Lions were up to 200 some yards of offense, and the Bucks were at like 20, and they were only up 7 points. I mean, they desperately needed us to find the end zone somehow, and he made it happen just in the blink of an eye once he got the blocking in front of him. So that was nice to see. And then, yeah, he looked really good in the open field in the screen game. The first one he takes for that big chunk on the first drive where he stops on a dime, makes the two tacklers miss. That was beautiful. Just a great day from him. And it wasn't a good Montgomery game, but it was a great Gibbs game. And it evens out, right? Remember the Cincy game where, oh, that was a great Montgomery game, not a good Gibbs game. That's the advantage of having these two players.
Yeah, and credit to like Vita Vea in the middle was blowing up runs all night. That's part of why Montgomery had no successes because anything that was not duo up the middle was just a travesty. And it's funny because I was kind of complaining about the amount of duo the Lions were running, and then Gibbs hits that homer on a duo concept, which, yep, that'll work every now and again. And Anton Winfield, that had to have triggered his PTSD from the division around a couple of years ago because what that's it's funny that the same kind of concept has happened twice where Gibbs breaks through the line and Winfield is the only one there in the middle of the field and Gibbs just has to run around him. Just absolutely incredible. I and There was also a play that was like a 2 or 3 yard loss that could have been a home run, but Brock Wright slipped on the play and ended up missing his block as a result. It's crazy to think that that game was almost even better. And thank God for Jahmyr Gibbs because, like I said, he was the only thing on that offense that was working in this game because the passing game was just completely broken in for a large majority. Um, and I know some people are. We should bring up this one stat that to I guess criticize the offense one last time. The Lions have not converted a third down of 10 or more yards so far this season, which I know the first thing my mind went to was, man, they've called a lot of screens and they've done a lot of punting, like in a metaphorical sense, in these situations where they concede. And it really seems like the theme of this offense, when they're not on schedule, when they get backed up, they don't have the ability to recover.
And that's the biggest key moving forward. The other one is just better pass protection, especially with the young guards growing up. That's not really something conceptual. That's just something that they need to have happen over the course of the year. But the third and longs is really a sticking point in part because this is an offense that is really just built off the play action pass. Being able to run the ball consistently, getting some yardage to get you into situations where Goff can attack on play action. When they can do that, the offense is pretty much unstoppable. When they can't run the ball and they're getting stuck in these third and longs, they haven't had a way to get out of it. Now, that's an area where you could see JMO coming into play. That's an area where the guards growing up and improving in pass protection would be very important because I think some of their tendency to go to those screens is they really just don't trust the line necessarily to be able to hold up for the duration that is needed to convert some of those third and longs, particularly against better pass rushing teams. Isaac Tesla could be a factor in it too. If he grows up over the course of the year, just because of the big body that someone you can kind of just punt it up to and see what happens on those plays. Those are areas, those are possible solutions to the problem, but it is a pretty obvious problem. The biggest thing that slows this offense down is if you can stop the run and allow them to not play in play action, and if you give the defense the opportunity to pin their ears back, that's when they get into problems. And we saw that last week in the Kansas City game. That first 2, 3 quarters, they ran the ball really well. They moved the ball really well. Then they fell down in a score effects manner, needed to throw it to try to come roaring back, and it wasn't happening. It's really funny to me because this is basically the reverse of the Stafford era Lions, where the Stafford era Lions couldn't run the ball, and they were always really good in 2 minute drills, late in games, and it was basically, oh, they threw the idea of running out the window, and they're just letting Stafford just fling it downfield, and suddenly we could move the ball way better in those situations. And the Lions are a little bit of the reverse. Like I don't feel great right now about the possibility of, let's say they're playing Philadelphia and the Eagles score to go up 24-20 with a buck 25 to go in the fourth quarter. Do you feel great about the Lions driving in that situation, 70 yards for a touchdown? Like, I don't at the moment.
Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't feel great, but I'm even looking a little bit bigger than that. Like, let's say you get to the playoffs and you're playing against Green Bay or Philadelphia, whoever, and you go into the fourth quarter down 10. The
Yep.
game's over. You're not like at the way this team is playing right now, you're not erasing a double-digit lead or a multi-score lead in the fourth quarter. Like they just aren't built to do that right now. And obviously they're fully capable of it, and I think that's where the frustration comes, is they have all the pieces in place, they have the talent to be able to do this. They just haven't been able to execute on those standard passing, like drop back passing downs. So that's again something else they have to work on in the bye week. Still we're past the early part of the season. We're effectively into the middle of the season now. So some of those early season lumps, like that's not really a good excuse anymore. So this is where they have to really start to like take the bye week, really reevaluate where they are, and they need to grow a lot as an offense. Because despite the fact that they're third in points, a lot of that's inflated from the crazy run of like 90 points that they scored in weeks 2 and 3. So there's just they have to hit that other gear, especially when they have the games against Philly and Green Bay coming up on the schedule quicker than people realize. And the Vikings defense is still super aggressive, and they're going to get them into these uncomfortable situations, and they're going to have to figure that out. So, yeah, they got to grow.
Yeah, a couple other notes here. You touched on the Sewell play with Gibbs. That was really annoying to watch live because I'm like, they got it, they got it. And then he just runs right by the guy, the only person in the field of view that was a plausible block, and Sewell just runs right by him. I don't know. That was cardio merchant. Yeah, you brought that up earlier. That was the definition of cardio merchant. He's just out jogging on that play.
I wonder that because Sewell was going so fast on that play, I wonder if he was running too fast for his own good. And he was like, I can't slow down. Because he's what, 335, and he was keeping pace with Gibbs out in the open field, which is absolutely insane. You're never going to see Sewell miss a block like that again, though.
We also had another golf scramble that was pretty solid. He
Yeah.
just rolled out and picked up 6, 7 yards, went out of bounds. That's nice to see. Montgomery, bad whiff on a sack in the second
Yeah.
quarter, which you don't see much of. I mean, he's generally a really good pass protector, but this was just a clean whiff and it led to a sack.
The funny part is coming into this game, Gibbs or Montgomery was the highest graded pass blocking running back in the league, and then that play happened.
It also didn't feel like a great tight end blocking day to me. I
Yeah.
haven't reviewed the tape enough to really grade that, but just watching live, that was my inclination. And then the other one that we do have to talk about is, and this is we'll set aside the fourth down theory of it, which we'll come back to.
Mm.
But when you're John Morton and Dan says we're going on 4th and 2, I was not a big fan of that throw to just slot down the sideline.
Why yeah, you need 2 yards and you're taking a shot in what, unless there's 10 seconds to go in the half or the game, whatever. That was an incomprehensible play call.
And the referees absolutely missed a hold or DPI. I'm not sure if the ball was in the air at the point the tug happened, but definitely should have been a flag. Lions should have gotten a first down there, but I just don't like that at all. I mean,
No.
that's a shot you take on first down, not on 4th and 2. And it was kind of a page out of the Packers playbook because nobody in football takes more deep shots on fourth and short than the Packers. It's like their go-to thing. It is always very confusing to me, and I don't think it has the effectiveness to for me to want to replicate it.
No. And because you are banking on a defensive penalty of some kind. And if you overthrow that play, you're never going to get it because they love to only call DPI on underthrown passes or if it's egregious. So it just, yeah, when you have guys like Laporta, St. Brown, Gibbs who cook over the middle, you got to get them on these short intermediate routes. It's 2 yards. Like that, you have to have a better answer to get 2 yards.
Well, they tried a weird one on 4th and 1 later in the game, and talk about a heroic effort from Gibbs to save that one.
St. Brown as well to push him over the line. That so they brought back their give it to St. Brown, pitch it over to Gibbs, play that they ran a couple of weeks ago for a touchdown. Again, the Galaxy braining, you need 1 yard. Like, I know they got it, but man, that was way too uncomfortable. And I don't get what, like, it's 4th and 1, and you are stretching it as far outside as you possibly can. Insane.
Yeah, wasn't the cleanest game from a play calling standpoint, but it also wasn't the cleanest game from an execution standpoint. They gained a lot of
Yeah.
yards, but in kind of theme of the team, there's just something a little off at the moment, and then they need to find it in the next few months. That's a lot of time to do so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not worried long term, but they like you can be there's a lot of things to be critical about at this point. Now, speaking of execution in the other sense, I this ragtag bunch of DBs that a lot of people learned who they were for the first time. There was one that I heard of for the first time last night, but this line secondary, I like the defense as a whole, yeah, but the secondary with only Amik Robertson is the only starter healthy. Rakisine left halfway through with an injury and they held this Buccaneers team to 9 points. Baker Mayfield, who had the second best odds at MVP coming into the night, it was certainly didn't play well, but also 12 pass breakups by the secondary, as well as an interception. Just how incredibly surprising and incredible period of an effort was that?
Did you see the nickname of the Legion of whom?
That's exactly what I'm naming this episode.
Yeah, that was a great one. It was it was really shocking. I thought about coming into this game, and what was really stressful about the first half was back in 2021. I remember going into the Michigan Ohio State game. That was the Ohio State offense that had Stroud at quarterback, Trevion Henderson at running back, Olave and Garrett Wilson outside, JSN in the slot. It was a record-setting offense. Blah blah blah. We went into that game, and I remember a friend of mine told me that if Michigan could get 5 stops, they could win the game. 5 stops against that Ohio State offense. And then in the first half of the game, Michigan's defense gets like 4 stops, and they're only up one at halftime. And I remember just thinking, like, oh God, like how much longer can this really hold up? Like we did the defense did it as well as I could have expected for the whole game in the first half alone, and our offense didn't capitalize enough. And then Michigan's defense just kept doing it. And they got a bunch more stops in the second half, and they won the game. And this was kind of the same thing because I do that math in my head coming in, thinking, how many stops can we expect this defense to make? And in this situation with those DBs, especially once we heard the news that Mike Evans and Egbuka were going to play, and Kirby Joseph wasn't going to play, and Terrion Arnold wasn't going to play, by the time game time rolled around, I was like, man, we might only get 2 or 3 stops this whole game. Like, just hold them to field goals, that sort of situation. And then you go through that first half, and they're forcing a punt, and another punt, and another punt, and then an interception, and a fumble, and you get to halftime, and you're only up 11. I'm just thinking, like, man, that was they can't keep this up. They can't keep doing this. And they did allow a touchdown in the second half, and they allowed another drive that got into the red zone. But at the end of the day, they allowed 9 points, which I don't think anyone would have predicted coming in. It
Well,
was
and only
an insane
250 total
defensive
yards.
performance. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even in that second half, the drive where the Bucks turn it over on downs deep in the red zone, that was one of the weirdest drives of all time. Like, was it 17 plays to
Yeah,
gain
I'll
50
find
some
out.
yards? I mean, just moving 3 or 4 yards at a time, plodding down the field. I mean, that was how much resistance they put up. They made the Bucks work for every yard in that game, and it was just a truly incredible performance.
It was an 18 play drive that took 550 off the clock and they gained 53 yards. 18 plays to gain 53 yards. And they had like 3 4th down conversions on that drive. Like that drive took years off my life because the clock kept stopping because of the incompletions. And it was just like, okay, you at least are taking like 4 or 5 minutes off the clock. Even if they get in here, you took enough time off that you'll probably be okay. And then they just get the stop at the end. It was absolutely incredible. And I remember sitting at halftime being like, wow, that was incredible. No way that holds up. And then the Bucks score on the first drive to start the second half. I was like, okay, here we go. Now the offense has to save us because the defense did their job in the first half. And then they just found a way, man. It was absolutely incredible. And we should also mention the Buccaneers in the first half. It took until the Goff interception at the end with 20 seconds left, and then the play after that for the Bucks to cross midfield. They had 50 yards in the first half, and they were lucky to get that many because they shouldn't have had the ball with 20 seconds to go in the half. So it was a near flawless first half from the defense. Again, with no one in the secondary. 12 PBUs. Got a shout out, Nick Whiteside. He had three plus the 2 point conversion breakup. Amik Robertson had a couple, including the forced fumble, obviously. And then Arthur Mollett, I believe is how you pronounce that name. That was the one I had never heard of him before, and he gets an interception on a just a pure hustle play where Cade Otton is unable to squeeze it, and he just rips it away from him. Absolutely unbelievable. Eric Hallett had a couple nice plays as well. Funny enough, Thomas Harper, who's your guy that we kept hyping up, he was the quietest of the misfits back there. It was just incredible.
Well, in fairness, Harper was playing safety, and
Yeah.
you don't always want to notice the safety.
Well,
It's
Hallett made some nice
generally
plays.
that is true, but it's generally a good day if the safety is unnoticed. Which is the truth across the defense, really. But I mean, Whiteside stood out just with those PBUs and some really big moments, really expert-looking ones. I mean, that one in the end zone on the seam shot was really
Oh, yeah.
pretty remarkable show of skill there. Rocky Yassin, I think, did pretty well in his battle with Mike Evans. Like he got some, he won some. I enjoyed the tweet with it, the Aaron Glenn dancing clip, where it was like Rocky Yassin while Mike Evans is laying dead on the field. But no, I mean they did a good job across the board. That interception was crazy. Robertson deserves credit for the peanut punch on that fumble. It just was a great effort all around by these guys, and they did get helped out by the fact that Baker was pretty off kilter. He just airmailed some throws that you usually expect him to make. That's the way it goes. Goff was off kilter too, so it was just kind of a down game for quarterbacking. And part of the Baker story, though, has to go to the defensive line. And I thought we talked about this last week. I was saying I didn't really think that highly of the Bucs offensive line outside of Tristan Wirfs, but what the Lions were able to do against that group was pretty good, and it was pretty surprising to see what they got out of Halim McNeil right away. I mean, it's like first or second snap of the game, he gets a pressure, and it just felt like he made a huge difference in terms of just the feel of the Lions' ability to generate organic pressure in this game.
Yeah, he was absolutely spectacular and so much better than I could have possibly expected him to be. I said that he was probably going to be the Lions' best interior threat just based on they don't have one. But I wasn't expecting him to come in and immediately look like he was at 100%. Like that was exactly what he looked like last year before the injury, it felt like. And so absolutely spectacular there. I think Hutchinson was credited with 11 pressures in this game. Al-Qadim Muhammad was credited with nine. And the Lions defense was they had a 68.4% pass rush win rate percentage in this game as a team, which is incomprehensible. And they had a game where they had 7 sacks against the Ravens, and that was no like they didn't have the efficiency in that game that they did here. It was spectacular. Derek Barnes got a sack working against Tristan Wirfs, which was insane. And I like that doesn't ever happen. And Barnes was playing edge a lot more in this game. He was rushing the passer as the edge opposite Hutchinson a lot. I think they're relying on him more to be that run setting edge at this point, as Davenport and Josh Pascal are still on the shelf. It was very like just very impressive from the defensive line. That's not even counting like Jack Campbell had a freebie of a sack on the first drive, but he had a couple of really nice tackles against those screens and a PBU, and Zaloni was involved too. Like every part of the defense was just working so cohesively to shut down everything the Bucks tried to do.
Yeah, I mean, on the defensive line, this was a great Hutchinson game. This was an example of pressures versus sacks because did he have one sack in this game? I'm trying to
No,
remember if he even had one.
unfortunately,
No,
unfortunately, the
no
streak
sacks.
is
Okay.
over.
Okay. Well, this was the prime example then of pressures versus sacks because he
Yep.
was really getting a lot of penetration and a lot of bull rush. I mean, he had that one play where he just drove the right tackle straight
Yeah.
back into Baker, and I was watching that live and was like, "Wow, that's pretty good." And then Tyrus Wheat had
Yeah.
some
Strip sack.
moments. Yeah, I know. I don't know where that's been because a few weeks ago we were talking about Lacey, and I was like, "Why? What is Lacey doing out here?"
We just
And
needed a backup right guard and right tackle to be in there.
so they switched Lacey out, bring Weed on. He had a nice game. Muhammad had a nice game. It was just great up front. I mean, it's pretty crazy that this is the same defense. Not exactly the same because McNeil does make a big difference, and but the one that was in Green Bay where they couldn't get anything for basically the whole afternoon to what that was. And look, the Packers have a much better pass protecting defensive offensive line than the Bucks do, but still it just is really night and day. And part of that's McNeil, part of it is Hutchinson was probably pretty rusty, and some other guys are starting to step up. They weren't featuring it Muhammad as much back then. It feels like they have a good rhythm. And next week we'll talk about some trade targets. There's a lot of conversation that the Lions are looking for edge rush help on the
Again.
trade market. I know, again. But honestly, at the moment, I'm feeling okay about this group from an edge rushing standpoint. I mean, they'll have a big test when they go up against the Eagles and they go up against the Packers, but not against the idea of acquiring one. But at the same time, I don't feel like it's a pressing need at the moment, the way Muhammad has come through and how it looked with McNeil back. They're rolling at the moment.
It's certainly not the same degree last year where it's like Hutchinson's down and we have nothing. Like we need a body. We need someone who can get anything going. Whereas now with Hutchinson healthy, obviously he takes so much attention. He was chipped on, I believe, over 50% or right around 50% of plays in this one. The Buccaneers understandably wanted to try to take him away as much as possible. It didn't really work, but whenever you give up 4.5 sacks to a guy one game, the next time you play that team, you're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So full credit to them for at least trying to keep Baker upright, but just couldn't do it. It was incredible game from every level of the defense, and obviously a lot of credit also belongs to Kelvin Shepard. His best game as a defensive coordinator so far. He has really met the challenge in being prepared for what every team has to offer.
Yeah, Shepard was great. He deserves credit for the whole performance. Those linebackers, which are his positional group, Anzalone had the tackle on Kate Otten just short of the first down. Campbell, as you mentioned, that tackle on the screen, I think it was the second drive of the game, where that screen was going to go for a big game if he doesn't make that play. It just, everyone was good. I mean, there really isn't any negatives. Like,
Yeah.
Robertson was beaten on a throw here or there. Yassine was beaten on a throw here or there. Okay, that's football. Like, no one's going to, certainly against a team like the Buccaneers, you're not going to stop everything. But this was as close of a perfect effort as you can really have, and in a really surprising fashion, but feels very good. And hopefully they can come out of the bye week and just keep attacking because the Vikings are not a great offense. Uh, Whether it's with JJ or Carson Wentz, we'll talk about the Wentz performance this week. But if you could start stringing some games together, I think you'll feel pretty good going into the mid-November gauntlet.
Now, switching over to the rest of the game, I don't think there's that much. Like we should mention the Jake Bates missed field goal. He has not been great on 50 plus yarders this season. He has the leg for it, but the accuracy has been leaves something to be desired. He did hit a 57 yarder, I believe it was, where he doinked it in.
58 is what they said on the broadcast.
58, so ties a career long for him. Doinks it in, barely goes through. You saw the sigh of relief that he had after that one went in. I believe he's 2 for 5 now on kicks over 50 yards. Just not great.
No, not particularly great, but I'm not a big like kicking field goals guy in general, and the Minnesota Vikings game, which we will talk about, is a good example of why you shouldn't play for field goals. I'm okay with it. Like as long as he's drilling them inside 50, whatever.
Which
That's the main. You just can't miss the layups.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although I do want it to be like a bit like you remember the Houston game last year. That was entirely 50 plus yard field goals at the
Yeah,
end. So
Yeah, you want it to be. I think the 50, 60 yarders are for like the end of game stuff, right? End of game, end of half. That's when I want that to happen from a kicker. Otherwise, I want to try to avoid those. But the 58 yarder was a big one because they're up two scores at the time. And if he misses it, you're giving them the ball around midfield, which is why I generally don't like kicking field goals of that distance outside of end of half stuff because the field position convey if you miss is a huge negative. But speaking of field position, Jack Fox had a 66 and a 63 yarder in this game. Now they both get returned, so it chops it down to net of 52 and 53, but that's still pretty good. A couple just great punts in this game.
yeah, he was uncorking them. I also want to shout out the Bucks punter,
Yeah.
remarkably consistent at getting the Lions on the 14-yard line. Oh my Lord, like Khalif Raymond just fair caught it in that 10 to 15 range like four times in this game. And it was like I kept watching, I was like, man, this punter is dialed to one specific yard line. It
Well,
was
and they weren't
crazy.
they weren't like punts from midfield that he was pinning. Like he was flipping
No.
the field, like just bombing
Yeah.
them from with hang time. Those were really nice punts. So this was a good show of special teams. The kickoff stuff, they continue to have that down pat. Bates is landing them pretty much exactly on the 3, 4 yard line each time. The coverage has been very sharp. Seems like
Yep.
they figured that out. They did have one in this game that gets returned to midfield, but there was a hold, and on replay, that was a pretty decisive block, so I'm not going to fault the coverage there. Just considering the start of the year where we were removing the steak knives from the drawer to attack Dave Fepp, the knives have been put back. It seems like things have been smoothed out, which is good to see.
Yep, the seat warmer was firmly turned off. The air conditioning is on at this point. It's like we've cooled right off from that aspect. So yeah, special teams kicking is the only thing. Aside from that, it's good. Game theory, hit me.
So, first of all, we have four, I think, fourth downs in this game. 4th and 2 at the plus 15, up 7-0 late first quarter. They go and they do not get it. This is an interesting one, I think, to me. I usually these are always go for it, but I was kind of leaning kick there. And the only reason was because they lost the field goal in plus territory the previous time. And I just felt like consolidating the two-score lead and making it not come up empty two drives in a row in Bucks territory was why I was kind of leaning towards kicking. Usually I go, but that one I was like, if you're up 10-0, you go for it. If you're up 7-0, I was leaning kick a little bit.
Yeah, and I get it. My rationale was coming into this game, I was fully under the impression that the Lions would be able to move the ball, but I was worried about the Lions' ability
Yeah.
to score touchdowns. And so any chance you got close, I was very aggressive mindset in wanting to get touchdowns at any cost. So I agree with going for it. But as we talked about earlier, I despise the play call that they chose.
Yeah, it's a weird one because they went for it on these sorts of ones against the Ravens, and you sit there saying in that game, well, you're not going to win kicking field goals. You got to score touchdowns. But I just felt like the way the game had shifted a little bit at that point, where your defense is putting in stops. At that point, I almost moved to just wanting to reward them with points and building up score leads. But anyway, that's a kind of fringe one. 4th and 1 at the midfield, exactly the 50, 21-9, start of the fourth quarter. I think that one was a pretty obvious go.
Again, obvious go, obvious hate the play call, but at least that one worked.
Then we have the ones where they kicked 4th and 5 at the plus 36, up 14-0, 150 remaining in the second quarter.
I was surprised that they kicked, actually. I thought they would. I think that was right on the fringe of where they could have gone because you're in no man's land, you're in long field goal range. I, I was surprised that Dan opted to kick.
I get the idea of we're going to kick to make it the three-score lead, but with Bates' shakiness, I was kind of, I don't know, but the offense was also out of sync there. I could
That's
have
the
gone
thing.
either way on that one.
I
Yeah.
think because the offense was playing so bad, like given the game context around it, I'm fine kicking it and giving Bates a chance.
Which is why it's interesting that on 4th and 10 from the 40 in the early fourth quarter, up 21-9, they kick,
Yeah.
considering Bates missed
Whew.
an earlier field goal. And again, the field position and 4th and 10, I was expecting them to punt there, kind of, but it ended up working out. He made it. I think I would
Yeah.
have punted. I'm not going to. I thought it was pretty fringy.
At that point, Bates is 1 for 4 from over 50 yards. I would not have trusted him to make a. He had
No,
missed
I
from
didn't
50.
trust him.
Yeah, like I didn't trust him at that point, so I would have punted. Again, it's not necessarily based on statistical probability. Like you probably should kick the field goal there, but based on the context and performance, I would have punted.
Yeah, there were a lot of feel of the game decisions in this one,
Yeah.
as opposed to just the pure mathematical model, because we were in an odd sort of game relative to what the Lions are usually in and what we expected coming in.
Yeah. So, aside from that, do we want to do ref talk here about some of the
There were
carnage?
some things in this game. The missed DPI slash hold on Tesla, we talked about that one. The OPI on Chamo. The Rocky Sin got called for a DPI on Evans that I thought was kind of borderline. I mean, Evans kind of
Yeah.
pushed off too.
I don't think that's a penalty either way. I think you let him go. Also, I thought Evans caught the ball, but they ruled it
No,
incomplete.
he only had 1 foot, and then when his body came down, his body was out
Okay.
of bounds. So that was
Okay.
what they ruled. So then there was the weird review stuff later in the game, where this was a long game, in part because of these reviews that bogged it down in the second half. You have the double review of the Otten fourth down play. Why didn't they just review both things at the time? Why did they have to do it, then go back to the screen?
So I was so confused because when what was the original thing they were checking? That he made the catch?
Process of the catch, yes.
And I was looking at that. I'm like, that's not what the challenge should be. Like he was short. I don't like he made the catch, but he was short of the line to gain. Why are we challenging the catch? And then they come back. I was like, oh, so did Dan Campbell challenge that and the refs misinterpreted it, or did Campbell just say like, did Dan just go to them and say he didn't get it and they just went with that? Like I have no idea what
Yeah,
the explanation.
I don't know how that works because in baseball you can challenge like on a double play. You can say we want to challenge the out at second and the out at first, and they just do it all in
Hmm.
one review. I don't know how that works in the NFL. I don't recall ever seeing this situation happen before where they are challenging essentially the wrong thing about the play. Odd.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. And look, it works out in the end. Otten was short by a hair, and the correct call was the Chiefs. So it's kind of the same situation as the Chiefs shenanigans last week, where it's like, well, I disagree with the process, but the correct outcome occurred. It was
Right.
just very weird. And Bucks fans have a right to be angry about the ref being like, after a second look, so like first they said the challenge was unsuccessful, and then after a second look, the runner was actually short, and because the second look changed the outcome of the play, we're also going to give Detroit their timeout and their challenge back. So, but then I was sitting there and I thought that they reversed the call, but because it wasn't what the Lions challenged, they reversed it but still lost their timeout. It was just a very confusing sequence of events.
Yeah, I didn't get a I didn't understand that, but then I didn't understand the other review later in the game. What was he
Yeah.
challenging?
So Campbell actually talked about this. I gotta find the quote. He talked about it in his presser, and if I can't find it, I'll paraphrase. But he essentially said, "I just thought, like, I thought that Baker could have been down or something. Like he was like, I don't know. I just challenged it. Like he kind of, like he kind of admitted that he admitted it was a bad challenge. Let me see if I can find it. But explain what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. Well, at the time I'm watching that play, and I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, all right, because this was the strip sack, right? And then the ball comes out, which, by the way, that on a ref talk discussion, just as an aside, I think the rule should be all offensive recovered fumbles, or let's say on sacks, should go back to the original or to like the place of the fumble because they do that on third and fourth down. You can't recover a fumble for a first down. But I feel like on that kind of play, it should also just go back to where the quarterback was hit because they got a free 4 yards on what was going to be a -7 loss. Like the Lions would have been better off if they hadn't punched that ball out. And
Yeah.
it was going to be like third and 17 into third and seven. So that alone was kind of frustrating to me. And not just also the fact that Tyleik Williams jumps on the free ball and it rolls out of his hands for some reason. There was
Did you see
multiple.
Tyleek tweeted out after just a picture of Butterfingers? It's like, okay. Yeah, okay. The thing is with that rule, if that rule was different and you couldn't advance a ball on a fumble, would we have been robbed of the Cardinals Titans fiasco a few weeks ago with the touchdown fumble recovery? I don't know. But so this is the Dan Campbell quote. This is from yesterday. He said he was grasping at straws on the challenge at the end of the game. Said he thought Mayfield might have been down before he fumbled, which would have saved Detroit some yards. And then his actual quote was, "If you were like, what the hell is he doing? You would be correct." So at least he's willing to lean into the self-deprecating humor there.
Yeah, just very weird. Very, very
Yeah.
weird play. I get some better people up in the video booth because that was not a good sequence of events in this game. Definitely something to clean up there. I was glad that they did make the right call on the Millette interception because
Yeah.
I was sitting there watching it and I'm like, he's got it. That's his.
Yeah.
Like he's got control of it and he goes to the ground. He's got two arms on it. The other guy has one arm on it. Like
But
kind
not a
of
hand though. He's like it's like between
yeah.
his like arm and his bicep, and it's like he doesn't have the ball. And the broadcast kept saying that K. Doughton had possession of the ball first.
Well,
It's
yeah,
like,
they bring that TV referee on and he's like, "Well,
ugh.
I think he clearly has." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like are you
I
watching the same thing we're watching?"
this is where I forget which podcast did this bit, but it's like we have to just have the catch child in the booth where it'd be like catch, no catch, catch, no catch, and just have it be completely random because no one even know like even the people who are paid to talk about this stuff have no idea what they're talking about.
But I'm glad that they did overturn it. I've been too used to the baseball where the MLB umpires are just so cowardly on anything that's even remarkable, like remotely borderline. They're just like, well, some idiot could make a convincing argument that there's, plausible deniability, therefore we can't overturn. And it's like, no, if 9 out of 10 people are saying it's pretty clear, you just have to go with it. And it was
And
pretty clear. So
that's exactly why they had to scrap the defensive pass interference reviews is because the refs never overturned it. Like they were too stubborn. They're too stubborn and they stick to their guns too much. So you always have to account for the human nature of these reviews. I think that's why it's so important to have an external review process that it takes the referee bias out of it. But
yeah, overall, this was just a game with a lot happened in this game. A lot of crazy things. In the end, the Lions were clearly the best team in this game, and they get to the bye week at 5-2, and that's what ultimately matters.
yep, and that's exactly what we asked for. We said win one of the Chiefs and Bucks games. They win one. They're at 5-2. They are now in a very good spot. We'll do a proper like bye week review next week and do trade deadline talk at that point. But we should talk about the rest of what happened in week 7, starting with Thursday Night Football. Joe Flacco, or not like the Bengals are just dumb, but the Steelers are always the same. They are always 9-8 or in that range. They always play down to competition and they get burned for what seems like the thousandth time in the Mike Tomlin era, losing a game that they had no business losing.
Yeah, I didn't see a ton of this game. I turned it on right at the end. It's like it's weird that Iowa this year has been playing some higher scoring games. They played Rutgers in like a shootout, and now the Steelers are playing like the Bengals in a shoot. It's just wrong. What happened to the Steelers defense? This is not what we expect from this team.
Yeah. Ben Johnson and the Bears have quietly gone on a 4-game win streak. They beat the Saints 26-14 in a very odd game, but DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai looking like a pretty decent running back duo out there. And I know the Bears haven't exactly played good teams, but still worth mentioning that Ben Johnson he has the best record of any first year head coach so far.
Well, looking at the Bears' schedule, don't they have kind of the same thing that happened last year? Because remember last season they were at a pretty good win-loss record in November. Like the they were going to win the Hail Mary against the Commanders,
And
and that was going to make them like 7-2 or
5 and
something.
I think that would
Yeah,
have
and
made
then
them 5-2, and then they never won another game.
they just bombed out the rest of the year. Because you look at this schedule, they're 4-2. They have the Ravens this week, then Bengals, then Giants, then Vikings. Okay, they could win some of those games, and then they finish with Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Browns, Packers, Niners, Lions.
Might be one win in there.
I mean, I think it's an okay first season for Ben Johnson, but they're going to have to prove that they can do this against real teams because I'm just not really moved about beating up on the Saints and the Raiders, and the Commanders might be bad if we're being honest here. Um,
Yeah, they hardly look good, and Jaden Daniels it's looking like we've got another of these sophomore slumps after just an incredible rookie year. We had CJ Stroud a couple of years ago. Now Jaden Daniels is he's been battling injuries, but he does not look. Yeah, we might as well talk about that game. Dallas beats them 44-22. That defense in Washington stinks still. Granted, it stunk last year. But like we can call a spade a spade. The Lions put up 31 points in a game where they also had 5 turnovers. Like the
yeah.
Commanders' defense was never that convincing. And Dallas just and Dak Prescott for his part, he looks really good, but Washington just doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this defense, they've given up 364 yards per game, and I look at their schedule, how many great offenses have they even played so far? I mean, the Cowboys are certainly a great offense. They've been putting up points in spades, but Bears, injured Chargers, Falcons, who they give up 34 to, Raiders, Packers, Giants with Russell Wilson in week 1. I mean, it's not like they've played the murderer's row of offenses and it's becoming a problem. I mean, they play the Chiefs this week. Then they have the Seahawks at home. Then they have the Lions. Like, is there a world where they could be 3-7 and the season's kind of over by Thanksgiving?
It's certainly possible. It's a lot more possible than I would have guessed at the start of the year. I would have like I had this team probably around like the 9-10 win range. Like I didn't think that they were spectacular, but I figured that Daniels would just do enough to make this team competitive. And he, when he's not playing out of his mind, the team is very mid.
Right now, which are you more concerned about? Dallas at home or Washington on the road?
It's hard not to say Dallas because and it's not just based on the quality of the teams. You have to also consider the emotional context. Like Detroit is going to be so amped for that Washington game after what happened in the playoffs. And Dallas is going to be so amped for that Detroit game after getting humiliated at home last year. So Dallas is going to be up for that Detroit game. Detroit's going to be up for that Washington game. And yeah, man, I don't think. I'm suddenly not very worried about that Commanders game. Like I'm gonna be very confident in the Lions winning, barring like crazy injuries.
Well, I mean, in fairness, the Lions are always ready for Dallas. Like that's a game that
True.
Dan Campbell cares about because of his Texan roots and such. But yeah, I mean, I think when you look at those two teams, I would be more concerned about Dallas simply because okay, their defense is atrocious, but we know there's one thing they can really do, which is they can really score. They have a unit that's super dangerous. Is either unit dangerous for Washington? I mean, their offense looks fine. Their defense looks not very good. And that's
And now that Aaron
unless
Glenn's
you're
gone, I'm not worried about the offense for the Commanders.
unless you're super spooked about a chilly night in Landover, Maryland, being some problem for golf. I mean, I think the Cowboys have to be more concerned.
But I mean, if we've talked about this before too, right? Like, let's say that Commanders game turns into a weather game. Who are you taking, the Lions front or the Commanders front? I'm taking the Lions to just run the rock 45 times and chew out enough yardage that they win that one every day of the week.
Sure.
So, Commander season not looking very inspiring. Now, a very weird situation is going on with the New York Jets right now. Aaron Glenn loses again, unfortunately. They drop to 0-7. And Woody Johnson comes out and says, well, if you look around the league, who could possibly succeed with that quarterback? So Justin Fields has been benched for Tyrod Taylor, and it seems like he's about to be run out of the league entirely. And Aaron Glenn just got a vote of confidence from his owner. But this has all the makings of just a soap opera. Like, this is weird.
How is Tyrod Taylor still in the NFL?
Um, I don't know, man. Eh,
I was stunned to see that that was their backup. I mean, good for Glenn, I guess, that the owner is backing him over the quarterback. But that was, you remember the when Marc-Andre Fleury's agent tweeted out the photo of him with the sword in the back.
yeah,
We need Justin Fields' agent to do that because that was the ultimate pushing under the bus. I mean, he's not really wrong in the sense that like it's
Field
hard to
sucks.
imagine it's hard to imagine a team with Fields at quarterback ever making the playoffs or like doing anything particularly notable at this point in time. But Fields is also far from the only issue with this team. I mean,
Oh
are they
yeah,
going to win a game this year?
Dolphins. They have another chance against the Dolphins, and
Yeah,
that's
at
it.
home.
Yeah, the two worst teams in the league are in the
And
same
it's in
division.
December, so Tua can't throw the ball if it's outdoors in the cold. So yeah, they can win that one. 1 and
It's
16,
the two worst teams in football play in the same division.
which has been true for a large chunk of the last 20 years with that division in particular, whether it was the Bills or the Dolphins or the Jets in a given year.
Yeah, and speaking of the Dolphins, like the Browns, we know are not a great team. The Browns beat the Dolphins 31 to 6. That team sucks.
Well, it was going back to that those joint practices in August where the Lions beat writers were like, "Wow, this is the greatest joint practice we've ever seen from one team." And then it's like, "Well, maybe just the Dolphins were that bad," because that seems to be the story. I mean, Mike McDaniel, seemingly the most obviously already fired coach in the NFL.
Man, he's going to be such a good offensive coordinator for the Bengals next year. Write that. I'd write that one in ink right now. Easiest
Yeah, I
prediction.
mean, feels pretty likely to be at least somewhere as an OC.
Yeah, and so those, man, I wish we played that division this year because the Bills don't look as convincing and they don't care about the regular season. The Patriots are good. Drake May looks really good, but beatable. And the other two are just like those are games where you can put up 60 points and just have a cakewalk. On to a game that's a little bit more relevant to the Lions, because you've been alluding to this game all day. The Eagles beat the Vikings 28 to 22. I that I don't have words. This game was it started out weird right from the jump where the Eagles took like 12 plays to gain 30 yards and then they get to a 4th and 5 and bomb it for a touchdown to AJ Brown. And I was like, okay, this game is gonna be weird. The Vikings, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of short field goals, or a couple short field goals in this one. And the Eagles, a couple big touchdowns. They have a 37-yarder to AJ Brown on 4th and 5, a pick six on a play where Wentz makes a bad decision and gets walloped. And then Devonta Smith has a 79-yarder as well. No words. Vikings are weird.
I was cheering for the Vikings in this game because the Eagles, I think, are more relevant for playoff positioning. If the Lions lose the NFC North to the Vikings, there are far deeper issues going on than just the Vikings winning games. So I was cheering for Minnesota, which means I was mostly watching the NFC North games on Sunday. I wasn't doing a lot of red zone, so I had that one and then the Packers game back to back. And in both cases, the rooting interest put up a good fight but lost, and both of them were unpleasant games to watch from a rooting standpoint because just so many unforced errors by both teams. And with this game, the Vikings down to down were better than the Eagles. If you look at the someone puts the did we really get beat that bad chart every week and the success rate, they beat the Eagles pretty soundly in the net success rate in this game, but it didn't matter because they couldn't finish drives. And the Eagles got the big plays. That horrible pick six from Wentz decided the game. I mean, that was the margin of victory. And then you have late in the game, the Vikings have that drive where they're down, what, two scores late in the game. It was 28-19. They go on this long drive. They get deep into Eagles territory. They end up going for a 4th down and 2 at the Philadelphia 15 with 3 minutes to go. basically the game's over if they don't get it. Everyone usually you say kick the field goal there because it still chops it down to one score. O'Connell's saying no, we're close to the end zone. We need the touchdown on this drive. We're going, and they pick it up, and they get 1st and 10 on the doorstep, and then Carson Wentz takes a sack that kills a bunch of time and sets them back. They're not able to dig out of that hole. They end up kicking the field goal right at the 2-minute warning. They would have been better off just kicking the field goal. That that decision to go for it backfired, even though they got it because it killed more time and ended them up with the same field goal. They kicked 5 field goals, a lot of them short yardage. This was bad to watch, and Wentz was really hard on the eyes. The only winner in this game for the Vikings is J.J. McCarthy because I don't know if JJ is any good, but put him out there. I have seen enough of Carson Wentz. It's not happening with this guy.
Yeah, no, JJ, the way he's working back from injury, the explanation they got for why he's not going to play this upcoming week, or if he doesn't play, is that if his movement doesn't help him get out of the way of sacks, he's not going to play. Like if someone's coming off the blind side and he senses it, but doesn't have the mobility to move out of the way, they don't want to put him in there. And it just seems like a very specific explanation for why, like, just say he's not healthy. If, like, you don't have to explain exactly why, like, oh, if someone happens to burn around the edge and has him in their sights, he's gonna get hit anyways, like, in that kind of situation. But I guess that's the one they wanted to outline. So, Vikings, last place in the NFC North now at 3-3, which is not even that bad, but it is just funny to say. The Packers, as you mentioned, are the Packers capable of winning a pretty game?
Doesn't seem like it.
They did against the Lions, I guess, but like in week one. So basically they had a very, very impressive week one win against the Lions, and they've been really unconvincing since.
Yeah, I mean they had an impressive win week 2 over Washington, and then now it turns out Washington
I
isn't
was gonna
very
say, it
good.
just
So that
doesn't seem
game,
impressive.
that game's lost some value. This game was infuriating against the Cardinals. There are teams that find ways to win, and there are teams that find ways to lose. And the Cardinals' definition of finding ways to lose in this game, they were probably the better team again in like a down to down standpoint, but they made so many errors and there were so many issues that just were terrible. And again, really hard to watch. I mean, they control the first half. They go up 13-3 on a touchdown to Trey McBride with 7 seconds
7 seconds.
left, and then they kicked the ball for a touchback. If they landed on the 2 yard line, Green Bay could return it 50 yards, and the time would have expired. If they return it 12 yards, they start on the 20 with 2 seconds left. They can't get anything. Instead, they get it to 35 with a full 7 seconds and a timeout. Arizona gives up a chunk pass, easy peasy. They take the timeout. They bang through a 60-some yard field goal to get 3 points. I mean, that's just 3 points from coaching malpractice. Cannot happen. And then later in
Yep.
the game, the Cardinals are leading 23-20. They are driving. They get to midfield, and with 6 minutes to go, they attempt a 4th and 1 from their own 48. This is fourth and like a long one. It was closer to 2. They haven't been able to run the ball whatsoever all game. Jacoby Brissett scrambling plus his passing is the reason they were moving the ball. And they try a quarterback sneak from like a 1.5 yards, and they lose yardage. They got TFL'd on a quarterback sneak. And that was maybe the worst quarterback sneak I've ever seen. And they give Green Bay the ball at midfield. The Packers go and score the touchdown. They win the game. And there were terrible penalties from Arizona as well. I don't know. If I that was the first Cardinals game I really watched all year. If I'm a Cardinals fan, what's the point of tuning into this team? Because they just were so poorly coached, so poorly executing. They just seemed dead in the water. I mean, I went into this season thinking they got an easier schedule. They finished last year okay. They were like what 8-9 last year. I was thinking they could be a factor in that division, and I am not seeing that happen. That was really terrible.
Yeah. And um, I was laughing because so Micah Parsons had 3 sacks in this game. Very timely sacks too, like very good performance by him. But his odds for Defensive Player of the Year, he is now like it's like plus 180, which is getting close to like even money, which is like he's an overwhelming favorite. And he's like twice as favored over Hutchinson, and then the next one's like plus 600 at Nick Benito. It's like what this game is so stupid. The odd calculations for some of these awards now, but I found it funny. Like his odds doubled since after that game, which you knew would happen.
I mean, obviously Parsons is a great player and he had a good game in this one. I mean, he's going to be like DPOY this year is the Selke Trophy of the NHL, where the writers before the
Reputation.
season, yeah, decide who is going to win the Selke because narrative and whatever. And the moment Parsons got traded, it was guaranteed. He could have 4 sacks this year, and he was getting the DPOY, like just written
I
in
feel
stone.
bad because Nick Benito is going to get robbed of that award. Speaking of the Broncos, this will be the last game we talk about. The drunkest fourth quarter I have seen in a long time. For those of you who didn't see this game, the New York Giants led 19 to nothing going into the fourth quarter. The game ended 33-32 Broncos. The Denver Broncos scored 33 points in the fourth quarter. Absolutely. And I was watching this game and the Broncos were so unwatchable in the first half. Their offense couldn't do a thing. The defense was missing coverage assignments. They were giving up chunk yardage, and the Giants were just having their way with them. And then out of nowhere, the Broncos just played out of their minds and threw a sheer there was a very bad interception by Dart in the fourth quarter as well. But out of nowhere, this was they were honoring Demarius Thomas in this game, and his spirit just took over that fourth quarter. It's like he looked down and was like, "You idiots! I need to like some divine intervention here because that was insane what happened."
So I wasn't really watching this game because I was watching that Packers game, and I just heard about what was going on, and then I had to look up the highlights later. So the craziest thing about this game to me is that the Broncos scored the first touchdown, and then the Giants answered them. Because usually, whenever you hear that like X amount of time left when the comeback starts, which in this case was they were up what 19-0 at the start of the third quarter or start of the fourth quarter. Like the famous 28-3 screenshot from the Super Bowl. That's always taken like 1 second before the team scores the first
Yeah.
touchdown to begin the comeback. So I'm thinking, you know what? The Broncos probably had the ball deep in Giants territory right at the start of the fourth quarter. Then they immediately score and the comeback begins. That is what happens. But the comeback didn't really start then because the Giants answered them. And it ends up, it's not a 19-point game. It's an 18-point game after that. But it's 18 points with basically 10 minutes to go. And the Broncos don't end up scoring that second touchdown until, uh, 5:19. I mean, that's crazy to come back in that amount of time. And the biggest question here is why were the Giants throwing the ball on 3rd and 5 with a rookie quarterback?
Don't worry about it. I also have to mention, so the first touchdown the Broncos score to Troy Franklin was on a deflection. Like it throws to the end zone,
Yep.
deflects off a Giants defender, caught. Then the Giants on their next drive get an even dumber deflection on it was like a 3rd and 11, and it deflects off the defender in the middle and bounces like 10 yards over to Theo Johnson, who it runs it 41 yards off the deflection for the touchdown. And at that point, it's like, okay, the Giants had like the luck got reversed and the Giants have it. And then the Broncos score 3 touchdowns in a 3 minute span. And then the Giants score again. And then the Broncos have 30 seconds and they're able in 30 seconds to drive down the field to set up a game-winning field goal. Drunk.
Yeah, I mean, example of two perfectly mid teams kind of
Yeah.
in that fourth quarter, in that fourth quarter, sort of the both standing by the door, no, after you, sir, no, after you, no, after you. I mean, just handing each other the game back and forth. But no, I mean, to revisit my point on that 3rd and 5, at that point, the Broncos have burned two timeouts. They've only got one remaining and a 2-minute warning. And it's about, it's still four or some minutes, but if you run it one more time, they either burn the timeout or they run it down to 4 minutes. At that point, as long as you can keep them from scoring until after the 2-minute warning, you recover the onside kick, the game's over. There's no in that situation. I'm all for being aggressive to go for the win and go for the kill, but you don't need to do that there. You've got a big lead and you've already dwindling their timeouts. Completely unforced error to throw that ball, especially with the rookie quarterback. Obviously, it's an unforced error to throw the interception,
Yeah.
but even an incompletion would have been a dumb decision from a game state standpoint. So a lot of problems here, some defensive issues that led to this, but all-time win probability chart is what I'll say from this game.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. So it was a crazy week 7. Lions get the win. That's all we care about. And now they go on their bye week at 5-2. They'll come back in a couple of weeks to play the Vikings at home. And this weekend, just enjoy the games with no Lions, no extra stress needed there. And we will be back early next week to break down, kind of do a early season review, like a bye week review of the Lions season so far, preview some trade deadline targets, and of course preview Vikings in week 9 and recap anything that happens in week 8 as well. So that if you've made it this far, feel free to hit like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on a podcasting platform, please hit follow and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. You can find the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, and we will see you guys next time. Cheers.